All right, welcome to the TLDR Git, too long didn't read, for those of you who are nerds like me and don't read release notes. So what this series is just a high-level overview of basically what you need for certain topics, what you're actually going to use. And we're going to start with Git here. This will be our first video, and then we're going to move on to HTML, CSS, JavaScript, teach you the basics to get you up and running. When it comes to programming software, 80% of the time you're using 20% of your resources, of the language, of the framework, of whatever it is. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on to get you up and running, to cover that 80% in as fast as possible, to just expose you what you actually need to know, right? There's so much out there. It'll take you a decade to master JavaScript, but it might take you a month to be, get situated with it and get going. And that's really what these TLDR courses are about. So what is Git, right? What is it? Well, it's version control. What is that? It allows us to essentially keep records of code. So if I have code from yesterday, I know what code looked like yesterday. If I have code today and I go and I save my code, imagine that we were playing an RPG, right? We're playing some sort of video game, and instead of saving over the same file, we're now doing a new save every time. And so Git and version control is exactly that, where we are now have a save for every time we save our code. And it's not necessarily going to override our existing code, but we can look at each save in our code. That's what the version control is. What is GitHub, right? So you've probably heard of Git and GitHub. GitHub is a online, it's essentially the version control on the cloud. It's a website that allows us to host our code. It's used by a lot of different companies. It's used by a lot of different developers, mainly because it's free to store your code for the most part. And it's going to be what we're going to be using when we give a brief rundown of Git and how it works with GitHub, because chances are you're going to be using GitHub, especially while you're getting started. When you get a professional role, you might be using Microsoft's version of you're still going to be using Git, but where and how it's stored will be its own environment. But for the most part, we're going to be focused on GitHub. We don't care about how code is stored elsewhere. So that's a brief overview of GitHub. It's a place where we store our code, and we're going to go and create an account and see how to get set up and going on GitHub as well. So why learn Git? Well, it's a lot of reasons. It's going to allow you to build a portfolio and document that you're actually coding, right? A lot of developers, they say they code, but it's hard to prove it. And so Git is going to allow us to have an actual portfolio where people can look at our code, and as well as see on GitHub specifically, see how often you're actually coding, how often you're using Git, how often you're sending your code out to be saved. And so it gives us a way to do that. It's also going to give us the ability to back up our code and take it anywhere we go, right? You don't have to have your laptop. If you're using Git and GitHub, we're going to be pushing our code out to the cloud, and then we have access to use it anywhere. And that way, other people can look at it, other people can use it and do something with it. Most importantly, I think, is that it's a required skill in today's working world. Front end, back end, whatever sort of web developer role you have, you're going to need Git. That's just the state of the world. And you should. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not like one of those skills where, oh man, is this worth my time? Is this that? No, you need Git, and you need version control. And so you're saying, well, what about, okay, I understand version control, but do I actually need Git? And the truth of the matter is, yes, you actually need Git specifically because the market is controlled by 90% version control, 90+%. 90% is probably on the low end of version control of market. I have a link here to dive into a little bit more if you just want to check it out, but you're welcome to do your own research. But Git controls the version control market like very few other things control market percentages, and so it's something you're going to need to know. Now, what are we going to be focusing on in this course? There's really 6 main topics that come to mind when you are learning Git and how version control works. And these are the things that we need to know. Are there other topics? Absolutely. Are they as important? No. This is the stuff that you're going to be working with about 80% of the time, 90% of the time. The other sort of one-offs, you can learn that when you get to it. When you run into that issue, when you run into that error, this is going to be enough to get you going. And actually, the stuff that I use as a developer on a daily basis, that I pretty much 95% of the time, 99% of the time. So we're going to talk about cloning, what that is, what it means to stage, what a commit is, what it means to push our code, the difference between the master branch and a different branch. These are all topics we're going to talk about, and hopefully sort of demystify a little bit of the coding. Even these terms alone here are very strange, right? Cloning is nothing more than copying code that's out there. Staging is nothing more than getting ready your code before you're about to save. Committing is getting your code ready to go in and push it to your branch. What's a branch? It's a version of your code. And master branch, that's the Mac Daddy, and pushing, that's actually saving our code. And we're going to go and give some examples of that right now. Before we get started here, might I recommend devmountain.com, Dev Mountain Coding Bootcamp. As we can see from their wonderful web development syllabus here, they're going to be covering Git and GitHub, which is nice to see. JavaScript, Angular, Node, React, databases, HTML, CSS, all the things that you're basically going to need for any front-end or full stack role in the mean or MERN stack. So check them out. Free housing is included as well. Okay, to get started with Git, the first thing that you need to do is go ahead and install the latest version and to add it to your computer so you have the ability to use Git. You can do that by going to git-scm.com and then just downloading the latest version for your appropriate system. In my case, it's Windows. So you'll get this exe. Now, I'm not going to install it, but it's pretty straightforward. It's just it's an exe file. You're going to click next, 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 yes, 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 and go on from there. So you'll do all this sort of stuff, next, next, next. You can just keep clicking next. There's really nothing else you have to do. So that's the gist of it. To get going and actually install Git, you're going to have to do this on any computer that you use, but once you do it one time, that's it. Okay, earlier we mentioned GitHub. First thing you're going to have to do when getting started is, of course, make a GitHub account. You can go to github.com and create such an account. It's pretty simple. There's probably some OAuth. Let me log out real quick, and you'll see, oh, I can sign up for GitHub, create your username, create your password, sign up. It's completely free. I'm going to sign back in now, but go ahead and create an account. So once you have an account created, we're going to need to create what's called a repo. So you'll see here, new repository. We can click that. So what is a repository? A repository is nothing more than a folder at the end of the day. So one of my repos, for instance, is my code quiz project right here. So what we're creating is a folder on the cloud that we can send our code to and save our code to, as well as go and get our code. That's really all a repository is. And we have to give it a name. In my case, I'm going to call it TLDR -git. TLDR Git. And if you want, you can give this a description. You'll see that you can have a private or public repository. Now, the one thing about GitHub is if you are using GitHub, which you should be, there's no reason not to, that your code is public, but you can get private repositories, the ability to make some for $7 a month. It's pretty cheap. So if you think you're making the next big app, something like that, you can do it for just $7 a month. So our description here is introduction to Git, something like that. And then we create a repository, and you can initialize it with a README file. And a README file is nothing more than essentially a document in your folder that is in Markdown. See here, there's our title. There's our preview. So just to let us know what it is, and we'll cover Markdown in a separate TLDR video.
But for now, if you see readme.md, this is a markdown file that just renders HTML and text to let you know what it is and what this repository does. So how do we get access to this repository? Because we created it on GitHub, right? We didn't create it on our computer. It's pretty straightforward. So what we're going to do is, you see this clone or download? What clone means when we're talking about Git is the ability to copy a repository from the master branch. What's the master branch? It is essentially the main branch that we're using, the main folder. So we'll go more into branches in a little bit, but basically what a branch is in Git is it's just a different path of your code. So let's say here we have our working code, but then we're making changes to this and we want to save those changes on the cloud, but we don't want to save them in production yet. We create a branch that says, hey, maybe this is our test branch, if you want to think it like that, where we're still trying to figure out if this is going to work before it goes out into the world. So you create a branch before you put it to master, which is really your production code. That's how you can think of it. Master is your production code. All the other branches are your playgrounds where you're working on things. So right now we're going to clone the master branch. You can see right here to the left we have a branch, and the only one in there is master, right? We haven't created any new branches. You can clone branches, but we're only going to clone the master branch because it's what we're working with. So you'll see here we have this link, and we're basically just going to copy it. Now that we've done that, we're going to go to wherever you want to save your code. In my case, I have a TLDR folder here. I'm going to launch. After you've installed Git, you should see this Git bash. If you right click in the folder, it's going to launch Git bash in that actual folder. Let's see if I make that a little bit bigger here for everyone. So you'll see that I'm in the folder that I wanted. Now all I have to do in order to clone the folder is use the git clone command, paste that link, which for some reason I copied TLDR and not what was in here. So let's go ahead and copy that. Jump back to here. And we're going to go ahead and paste that in there. So now that we've done this, you'll see, wham bam, we've now it sort of told us we downloaded 3 things. Let's go into our folder. You'll see, wow, we have this TLDR-Git folder, and it has this .git. You don't need to really worry about what's in here. Basically, this is just what helps Git run. Don't worry about this, but you'll notice that we have this README file. So if we launch our text editor, and if you're doing it the right way, you're probably using Visual Studio Code because that's the best one right now. Everything else is garbage. No, but I do recommend Visual Studio Code. But if you go to your folder, and you'll notice when we open this, the markdown file is going to say exactly what was in there when we preview it. Now this is markdown, but you'll see here we have TLDR, right? TLDR Git, introduction to Git. So now we've actually copied what was once on the cloud to our computer to work with. So how do we actually make changes though, right? How do we say, all right, cool, I like this. I see that I know how to copy the code down, but how do I make changes? What does that entail? Well, first, we'll have our little browser here, but let's say we wanted to add a example of how to push. I'm trying to remember markdown. It's been a minute, but so if you do a dash and then space, we'll make a dot. Markdown is just shorthand HTML. So in here, so how do we, we were talking about staging. What is staging? Well, so we've made a change to this file, and you'll see here in Visual Studio Code it will have this M here to say modify it. It means that when we pulled down our code, we have since made modifications, and we want to. It's just letting us know we've done that. So how do we fix that? Well, first off, let's bring up our text editor here, or our git bash. We want to cd. We want to change into the directory, which is TLDR/git. So, and you'll notice we have this master right here as well if you're using git bash. Git bash will tell you what branch you're on. So not only are we on the master branch, not only are we in this folder structure, but we're also on the master branch. So if we use git status, it will tell us, hey, has anything been changed since when we pulled down this code? And you'll notice it actually says, hey, you've actually modified readme.md, and if you want to push those changes, please do, right? So the next thing that we want to do is we want to stage our code. So what's staging our code? Because our goal here is to get that code on the cloud so other people can pull our changes down. So what can we do to make that happen? Staging is essentially saying, hey, we have all these modified files. Sometimes we've deleted files, sometimes we've modified, sometimes we've created brand new files. And let's go ahead and do that real quick, where we're going to create a new file, and we'll just call this index.js. And in here, we'll console.log. We'll just create a variable. Forget that. We'll just create a variable. We'll say const hello equals world, right? We're just doing hello world and Git at the end of the day. So we have this new file, and you'll see this U says untracked. That basically means that the repo doesn't know this file exists yet. You don't really need to worry about that too much. But now, if we go and we say git status, you'll see we have a modified file, and then we have untracked files, which are files that we don't know that we need. The repo doesn't know we want to add. Now you can use the command git add and target this file directly, as well as git add to target this file directly. Most of the time, I encourage you not to manually add files, each individual files. We have a much better way where we can just use git stage and then dot. What this is going to do is it's going to then go check all the modified files, all the deleted files, all the untracked files, and it's going to get it ready for you to go and send it to the cloud. So that's what staging does. And in our situation here now, we'll still have, you'll see what we've staged, and you'll see, okay, well, we've said, hey, we have changes to the README file. We've now added this new file, but all we've done so far is pulled down the code, made our changes, and then we've staged it to say, look, when we finally get ready to send this code, this is what you need to send. So the next thing that we need to do is a commit, right? So a commit is nothing more than allowing you to save these changes to your local version before you go and send it off. So it's almost like a second preparing of your code, right? So you stage it to get it ready to be sent, and then you commit it to essentially reaffirm that that's what you want to do. One of the benefits to committing is you can throw this -m on here, and that's going to allow you to add a message. One of the things developers do all the time is write really shitty commit messages, which make it hard to go back and figure out what their code would do. So one thing that we would say for a message in this case is added new index file and modified README documentation for push or something, right? And so now that's gonna go and make our commit. So you'll see here it's asking us to, I wonder if it's asking us to log in. We'll see here. The first time you launch Git on your computer, it may ask you to log in. But now if we go git status, git push. So git push is going to send the code to the repository, to that folder structure on the cloud. And here we go. Boom. Everything is good to go. And I think I'm actually gonna have to log in manually now that we've done that. If it updates it, so it didn't update it here, which means that we have to log in to our application, which normally it's supposed to launch a so git login. Okay, so you saw here when I tried to commit, we got this error message that said, that's telling us to run, we have to set up our username. I was thinking, usually it will prop up like a little box, say, hey, you need to log in, and it's a little dialogue thing, but we can do it this way. So user email is dylanthesemail310@gmail.com. Sweet. And then we're gonna have to go into and put our username. Git config, Control C, paste that. And this is allow GitHub to know who should be committing, and who did commit the code, who pushed the new code. We'll just put Dylan Israel, and let's see if we try to push now. Everything up to date. That doesn't sound right. Let's see, git commit. There we go, and there you go, and sweet. So you'll see 2 file changes, 3. So now we've made those commits. And finally, now that we've sort of prepped it, we had to set our username and stuff like that, just so that it could say who did what. We can go ahead and push it, and you'll see it's gonna be running, and now we're done, right? So if we go to GitHub, or if we check our status now after we pushed it, it's gonna say that everything is up to date, working clean tree. Basically, there's nothing for us to commit, there's nothing for us to stage, because we have now gone and updated our code. So now when we refresh it, you'll see our changes here, and you'll see our comments here as well. So our README has our stage dot here, and then our index.js has been added to the repo as well. And now if we, for whatever reason, we went in here and we said, you know what, man, I just want to delete this. And you know, one other thing I want to show you right now is that we're like, oh man, what happened here? So we deleted our code. How can we get it back, right? Maybe we made some changes and we're like, look, I just want to revert everything I did. So you might say our git status, right? Deleted, and we're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. How can I get it back? Well, there's the way of, let's just delete everything and pull straight down from the repo. But maybe there's some changes that you saved along the way that you don't want, that you didn't push out yet. So what we can do is we can use this git stash. Git stash will essentially just stash away all the changes that you made before you went in and staged your stuff. So you'll see now, we now have got rid of all that code and we're back to stage 1 where we can do it. But say we wanted to make another copy of this, we could just git clone and pull it all down on another computer. So let's go ahead and dive in a little bit more into branches and the difference between a branch and the master branch. All right, so let's talk a little bit about branches, why they exist, and what we are going to use them for. So branches essentially allow us to make changes to code before we're ready to put it on our production code or our master branch, right? Master branch being the name of the branch that is used, the one that is the code base at the end of the day, the file structure, the folder that we're storing all our code in to say, hey, this is our code that we're going to be releasing to the clients. This is the current version of our code. So we use branches as a way to create a place for us to make updates, save our code on the cloud, similar to how we did on the master branch, except now it's a new folder structure, but it's still in the same repository. Just imagine it's like a duplicate folder structure where it's slightly different, almost like an alternate reality, right? Where if you're a sci-fi geek like me, you know that there, and you believe in the multiple reality sort of stuff, where everything's somewhat similar except slightly different, right? And that's kind of how you could think about branches. And so what I want to do here is I want to create a new branch, and you can do this by git checkout-b and then the name of your branch. And in my case, I'm just going to call it branch _ example. And you'll see now, if you're using git bash again, that we have this branch example. And because we were on the master branch, it's going to actually keep what's in our code all the same, right? Even if we refresh here, we are in the master branch. Git will change these files to be accordingly. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and just add a new file. So let's say we'll just create a new file. We'll call this branch.js. And we can put something in here, and we'll just create a const branch equals
example, right? Nothing that we're going to use. But now that we're here, we've now added this file. So we want to add the code to our branch. All right, so we're going to say git stage. Remember, we want to stage it all. We want it to get ready. We want to git commit, and we'll say add a message, added branch JS example. So that's going to add our thing. And then finally, we want to push it to our branch. It's the same exact thing. The only difference is we needed to create our branch and then add it. Now, you'll see here we have this set upstream origin branch example. When you create a new branch on your local machine, this essentially just has to say, hey, wherever you're storing your code in this repository, just let it know that you need to set up the upstream, set up the ability to send this code. And this is a one-time thing when you create a new branch. So you'll see here, but all we would have to do otherwise is git push. So now that we've done that, if we go to our GitHub page, go ahead and come back to it. So you'll see here we are TLDR branch. We'll go ahead and refresh. You'll see this is basically saying that hey, you have this other branch, do you want to merge it into master? We're not worried about that right now. But you'll notice that we have this branch example. And you'll notice the master branch here doesn't actually go and there's no file, there's no branch file, because it's not part of our production level code, our master branch. But if we switch over to the branch example, it's there. It's working just fine. You'll notice there's also a different version going here. And as I mentioned again, if we change this to be to example 2, and then we staged our code as we would, because we made changes to our code, and then we committed our code, we added a message that said updated example 2, and then we pushed it, you'll notice that we don't have to set the upstream again. Everything's going to work the same. It's just that one time where we created a branch. So now that we've done that, how do we merge our code, right? How do we do that? Well, this is going to be slightly different for every organization. The reason I say that is when you are a developer in a production, as an actual software developer at a company, usually there are pull requests and things like that, which basically just means that other developers are going to look at your code before they say, hey, it's okay for this to go into the master branch. But if it's your own personal project, you're okay with it, how can you merge it? Well, you can do it through the UI here, but you can also do it through the command line as well. And so the way that you do that is now merging to the master branch is a little bit strange, but so we have our branch here, and we've already pushed our, you'll see here, all our changes for the branch have already been pushed to the tree. So the way that we can now go is we can first do git merge master, which the thing here is that's going to bring in the master branch changes. So let's say something got updated to the master branch. We're then going to, in our other branch, our branch example, bring those changes in. In our case, everything's up to date. There aren't any changes that we need to make. Now, after that, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and check out to the master branch. So checkout allows us to switch between branches. If we wanted to switch back, we could do branch example. It would switch us back, and vice versa. We go back to master. So this is going to switch between the branches. Now that we're in the master branch, which we've already checked to make sure there aren't any conflicts, we can go ahead and do git merge, and what we want is our branch example. And that is going to bring in all the files in that branch into our master branch. Now, you'll see here we do git status, nothing to commit. We've already brought that in. But the last thing that we have to do, so we don't have to stage it because part of the merging handles the staging and the committing for that. And all we have to do now is git push, and now that branch, all those changes in that branch is in our master branch and is now going out to our GitHub page, our repository, which if we refresh here, you'll see wham bam, everything's good to go. We have our branch.js. So just to run over that one more time. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to bring in the master branch to make sure no changes have happened. Now that you've done that,
the next thing that you're going to want to do is then, if you want to stage it, you want to commit it, all that stuff. The next thing that you want to do is then go to the master branch and pull in those changes from that using the merge keyword and the branch name. Then you just push to the repository and your code's there. So this was your TLDR of Git and GitHub. There's a few other things that might need to be covered down the road, how to handle merge conflicts and things like that. But I think you'll come across that once you get started and going in this. But this is what you're going to be doing 95% of the time when it comes to Git. So I hope you found that helpful. Hope you enjoyed this first video in the TLDR series. I'll see you for the next one, which I think might be HTML or JavaScript. We'll see. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share, support me on Patreon, all that good stuff. Check out my courses in the description below. I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, baby, I just got done with my Git tutorial. It's all about version control.
Oh, I wish we had that so I could prove your ass wrong.
Quick thank to our sponsor, DevicePlus.com. If you guys are interested in Arduino and the Internet of Things, such as Raspberry Pis, might I recommend checking them out at DevicePlus.com. If you click the link in the top corner, it'll take you to a really cool thing. It's an intro beginner level tutorial of how to build a tripwire using Arduino. Check it out.